Penn State fans, we're almost here. Penn State, Ohio State at the Beaver Stadium. Not the Beaver Stadium, Beaver Stadium. Noon Saturday, ESPN's game day, big noon kickoff. Jason Kelsey, all the big guns. All of the big guns, Max. They've redid the end zones. Everything is set up for hopefully an epic Penn State, Ohio State game. Unbeaten Penn State, one loss Ohio State. We all know James Franklin's record against Ohio State. I don't know that he really wants to talk about that. But Max, we're going to get to so much on this blue-white breakdown. We're going to talk about some of the stuff we've written about this week, some of the stuff we're going to continue to write about, some of the podcasts we have done. I know you and Johnny did a very interesting one. We can get to that. We're going to get to our preview. We're going to get to our picks, which I know everyone is just hanging on for dear life to see who we like in this game. But I'm just going to start, Max, with maybe the most important question of this Blue-White Breakdown podcast on Thursday morning, last day of October. November 1st is coming at us on Friday. Here's what people really want to know. Max, what is your Halloween costume for tonight?
I'm going as Drew Allar's healthy knee. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. No, I'm doing a low effort joint costume with my girlfriend, and we are going as the Midwest Princess Chapel Roan, which I'm sure the viewers are all over. But
I know she is a big hit with you. Obviously, your girlfriend, Johnny McGonigal, I think is a big fan. I've heard that name more often than not. So I believe you. I hope you can pull it off. You said it's a low effort. Did you say low effort costume?
I did say that. It's just like it. I'm
You're not mailing it in, but you just got other stuff to do.
That's right. It's like it's hard to explain, but like I'm wearing like a t-shirt that says I'm from Ohio on it, and she's like got a tiara. So we're together. We're the Midwest Princess.
At least you're not going. At least you're not assuming you go out. I'm not assuming you go out. At least you're not trying. You're gonna go out as something, and it might be a hit. Some people might get it. Some people might not get it. But I appreciate the fact that you did not just go as, a Penn State beat writer. I would have been upset if you did that.
I mean, I could have though, Bob. You told me I'm on my way to being a celebrity, which I didn't know.
I did say that. I did say that. That was, I'm glad you brought that up. But yes, that was brought up in one of our staff meetings, I think on Monday, and I'll stand by it, Max. So, speaking of the road to celebrity as a Penn State beat writer, we were both up at practice Wednesday night. That's right. Anticipated viewing window because we always get to see a couple of minutes. I was up there for the interviews. You got a really good look at practice. So let's not mess around. Penn State is left the Wisconsin game with a couple of significant injuries, at least involving 3 players. We've written about them. So I'll tee you up. What do you think you know about Penn State's Drew Allar, Dani Dennis-Sutton, and also an underrated injury issue involving starting right tackle Anthony Donkoh?
Yeah, I mean, quick hitters. Let's just get to them. Allar and Donkoh were both out there. Dennis-Sutton was not. So from the very baseline, it's a little less encouraging on Dani. Mm-hmm. I do think that there's still a chance he plays. I don't think that him not being out there is the end-all, be-all, that he won't play. But he was not out there, so things got to change pretty quickly for him. I'm not sure. We could pretty clearly see what happened on the field when he got hurt. He was grabbing at his right leg, his groin area.
Upper leg.
Struggling to get on the tandem bike, or the stationary bike, not the tandem bike. But, struggling to get on the bike. So that's pretty obvious. He's got something going on there. Drew Allar, obviously the big one that probably matters the most for Penn State. He was out there, looked like he was a full participant. I mean, he did everything in the window that we saw. I mean, granted, we don't see any team sessions. We don't see any 11-on-11 full snaps. But when he was doing drills, he did them all with no apprehension, no hiccups, no nothing. I mean, he was doing ball security drills, running through the pads. He was in the pocket doing routes on air. He was shuffling forward, backward, side to side, and he did it all without any without any slowdowns, which is encouraging. James Franklin did say he's going to end up being a game time decision, which, he's got to say that truthfully. Like, he needs to
Yeah.
make Ohio State prepare for both guys.
Mm-hmm.
But the signs are encouraging for Drew. Anthony Donkoh, maybe a little less so. He
Yeah.
was out there, but he was mostly just a spectator for what we saw. And he did have some. He's been wearing a shoulder brace for a while. I know he had some tape on his left ankle, that was pretty visible. I don't know if that has anything to do with what's going on with him, but he missed most of the game against Wisconsin. And Nolan Rucci has made some pretty significant improvement behind him this season, but it'd be remiss to say Anthony Donkoh is not a really important piece of this offensive line.
Yeah, I think, and especially, he's just continuing to get better when he's healthy. Run game, especially between him and Nick Dawkins and Denga, they can clear a path pretty quickly with their athleticism and their size. So Penn State and Andy Goldenecki always want to try and run the ball. So if Anthony is limited or can't play, I think it's a pretty significant issue. All three of them are going to be game time decisions. Telling, I think, James has asked about Grunkmeyer and whether or not, and he said, look, so we practiced Drew, we practiced Bo. So we did not practice Grunk. He didn't get any reps. So I think the plan, unless this is an elaborate ruse, and I don't think it is to attack Ohio State with those two quarterbacks. If they have to use Ethan Grunkmeyer, they're in trouble.
Right.
It seems like that. So very telling. Just real quick before we move on to maybe some matchups and some other stuff. So Dani, to me, is a very intriguing player just because of, I think a lot of the stuff he does, the focus is always, I think, on Abdul Carter, and rightfully so. The most disruptive player on the team, a first-round talent. Dani is a different kind of player, but he's a bigger athlete at almost 270 pounds. And it's easy to he's not as splashy, right, as Abdul. They move him around a lot. They continue to do that. He can play defensive tackle. I think he can rush upright. He can play, classic defensive end. He's a physical player. He does hurry the quarterback. He does have a lot of pressures. They need him. Without him, really, Penn State's going to have to make a go of this with three defensive ends, Abdul Carter, Amin Vanover, and Smith Vilbert. That is not ideal. I just remember, and I think, Max, watching the second half of the Wisconsin game, when Dani came out and he played one snap and was so, he just could not move, and he immediately signaled to the sideline and came out. I just wonder, in a span of 6 days, I know he's in the prime of his life, prime physical condition. You just wonder about how quickly he can get back to anywhere close to, effective playing against an Ohio State offense that's got a lot of weapons.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right on Dani. He's a super impactful player. I think Abdul would have a better day if he was on the field.
Yep.
But, in response, if Dani can't go, I'm going to give you a name that I'm going to have my eyes on close, is Max Granville, that freshman who reclassified from the 2025 class. James Franklin hinted at it pretty clearly even last week that Granville was probably going to play his fourth regular season game at some point. I believe he's already in 3. So the fourth one at some point before he burns his red shirt, but I think they're going to try and preserve it. So he's got one game left.
Right.
And I think it's going to be this weekend if Dani doesn't go. And I'll take it a step further with a bold prediction. With the way that Ohio State's offensive line has had to handle so many injuries, especially at tackle, I think Granville is going to play on a lot of pass rushing snaps because he is matured physically very quickly. And I think that while he is going to take some time to learn the full defense and the full spectrum of playing defensive end, the kid can get after the passer. So I think if he's green-lighted to play this weekend, I think he gets his first career sack on a big third down.
Ooh. All right. That is bold. There's no question. That's one of the bolder picks, but the talent is there. You just never know when it's going to show up. I think the history of the Penn State-Ohio State game, is loaded with performances from stars also, but there's also been a history where some, especially some defensive players, have risen to the occasion. Famously in the 2016 Penn State win, the lone win of the James Franklin era, there were some defensive players in that game in the second half. Whether it was Kevin Givens, he was one. Garrett Sickles was another. He had the best 30 minutes of his Penn State life in that game.
Yeah.
And he wasn't a freshman, but I mean there's a Penn State history there of players stepping up. We'll see how you do with your bold prediction.
Listen, that's dependent on Dani not playing.
It is, absolutely. If Deni's in the game, you're off the hook.
Yeah,
absolutely. If he's not in the game, if Dani doesn't play, I'm going to be staring at you for long stretches of the game, saying, "Where is this?" No, I'm just kidding. Max, let's just get to some of the matchups that you have your eye on that could tip the game. As we talk about this, the line opened at about 4.5. Ohio State probably because of the injuries, probably because Ohio State did not look great at home against Nebraska. I mean, Penn State's looked. I mean, forget about the score. I mean, to beat Wisconsin in Wisconsin with your backup quarterback, with no Dennis-Sutton and no Anthony Donkoh in the second half, take over the game. Really, I thought the effort in the second half of the USC game was really very impressive. Maybe their best 30 minutes. I think the Wisconsin 30 minutes, giving all of those things, might have even be better. Penn State is confident. They're deep. They believe they can win. So when you look at the matchups and you look at maybe how this is going to play out, what jumps out at you?
Yeah, Bob, like you said, both of us were at practice last night, so I'm going to flip this back to you quickly. But like the one that, because I know you talked to some people about it, especially one Abdul Carter. But like I think the obvious one is just like those Ohio State wide receivers against Penn State's DBs. Those two dudes, and really three of them, are really freaking good. And like it's no secret, Jeremiah Smith was the number one recruit in the country last year. And like James Franklin said last night when I asked him, he was like, yeah, he was the number one recruit, and he's come in and he's backed it up. Like you don't see that size that often. You don't see it paired with the explosive play ability. I asked Jalen Reed what stands out about him, and he's like, he's 6'4", 220 at 18 years old. You don't really have to say much more. So, like that kid's good. And Emeka Ibuka is kind of like the yin and yang there with him, who has just been there for a while. He's a savvy receiver, gets the job done in the run game. But then again, like he's a route technician. He's always there when Will Howard needs him. And you kind of got the wild card of Carnell Tate over there as the third option, who was a very highly rated recruit in his own right and has made some big plays. So it's going to be interesting because I do think this Penn State secondary is good. I mean, like we've seen them do good things this season. Obviously, they're missing one of the best players in the country, KJ Winston. That's nothing new. But Penn State plays a lot of man coverage. They do it every week. They try to run zone, and it usually doesn't work out. Might against Will Howard. I'll leave it at that. But they are going to run man coverage, and it's just down to whether those guys can keep up with how freaking good those Ohio State receivers are.
Not of money, I know. 20 of you, and you're rich as hell. We're going to give you tax cuts. We're going to pay you.
I am not rich as hell. I work hard. I scrape to get by. Donald Trump wants to give tax breaks to billionaires, but Kamala Harris has plans to help us. She's going to crack down on price gouging and cut taxes for working people like me. I voted for Donald Trump before, but this time I'm voting for Kamala.
The receivers, to me, when you think about the Penn State safeties, it starts with Jalen Reed, Max. I mean, we're running out of good things to say about this guy, but he deserves all the praise he's gotten. I thought it was, every once in a while, James will do this at his Monday news conference. He went out of his way to really just praise two players. They've gotten a lot of attention, but when you're a teammate of Tyler Warren and Drew Allar, and Abdul Carter, it's easy to get lost in the wash, right? So he said, look, Jalen Reed and Zane Durant are, playing their ass off. They really are. Yeah. They on any other team in the Big Ten, there'd be a lot more, I think, probably being written and said about them, but they are playing great. They're going to be big factors in the game. I also think with Ohio State's wideouts, I think that Zakee Wheatley, because of his prowess in pass coverage and his nose for the ball, I mean, he is a guy that I think you're going to hear from one way or another when it comes to this Ohio State passing game. I also think there's two other things I wanted to say. Everyone is caught up with Andy Kotelnicki, and deservedly so. Chip Kelly, as an offensive mind, especially when it comes to a run game, if you're gonna match those two up, there's no real advantage. Those guys are even, and Chip Kelly's resume is flat out better than Andy's. Maybe over time, Andy will have a resume that's the equal of Chip's, but he's done some things the last 10 to 15 years that have really changed the sport at both levels, the NFL and also the college game. A lot of it has to do with the run game. And I just have this feeling, Max, that we talked about the wideouts. I have a feeling when all is said and done on Saturday, it's gonna be the Ohio State running backs in one way, shape, or form, and the quarterback who is on the radar of Penn State fans and players and coaches for what he said, Will Howard. One way or another, they're going to have a huge impact in this game. Quinshon Judkins in that Peach Bowl against Penn State was way better than his stats indicate. I went back. He carried 31 times for 106 yards, caught a touchdown pass, but Ole Miss was running out the clock their last three possessions. And I think on his last 6 carries, he lost 18 yards. So he was much more of a threat than his stats indicate in that game. Both him and Travion, who did not play last year, against Penn State, but hurt them big time in 2022 and 2021, big difference maker. Both those guys can impact the game as runners and receivers. And Max, I have to say this: when the history says this is going to be right, one way or another, Will Howard, after he threw himself into the limelight, whether he realized it or not, is going to have a major say in this game, either with what he does or what he doesn't do. And I have a feeling with their offensive line banged up, you're going to see the quarterback run a lot from Ohio State in this game because they want to get the matchup advantage.
Yeah, I think you bring up a ton of good points to hit on there, Bob. Like the quarterback run, just since it's fresh in my mind, it's one of those things that can kind of attack the Penn State defense in a bit of a unique way because they've struggled so much in the linebacking core. With the receivers and the banged up offensive line, excuse me, Penn State's going to want to rush the passer a lot. And that's the only way that they're going to be able to corral the passing game is by getting to him. And so when you do that, you open up that read option for Will Howard, who's got a really strong rushing attack himself. And Penn State doesn't necessarily have crazy good spin back help in the linebacking core. Jalen Reed could help with it, but then you take him out of pass coverage. That is a way that Chip Kelly could attack this defense that I think is viable and something you'll probably see this weekend and good for you to pull up. But just to kind of go back to the Quinshon Judkins point too, and the Travion Henderson, I spent a little bit of time with Jalen Reed at practice Wednesday night, and Jalen Reed is always a really good quote, but the way he answered questions about these guys was very similar to what I said about Jeremiah Smith. He was just kind of like, yeah, we've watched these guys. Like, they're good. That's the bottom line. I asked him if he's been watching the Peach Bowl tape, and he's like, no, Quinshon's a little bit different this year. He's in a different offense. Like, we're watching this year's film, and he's still really good. And then we were like, well, Travion didn't play the last time you guys saw him. And he was like, yeah, but I saw him 2 years ago. So they have their attention, and for good reason. I mean, Travion Henderson, especially, I can think back to the last time he played, and then the year before that. It seems like he's always due for a big run against Penn State. It's happened in pretty much every game he's played against the Nittany Lions. So it's interesting. The Penn State defense, their attention has been taken by Ohio State, and for good reason. And I think personally, I think that's where this breaks down. I think the Penn State defense is good, but I just think that there are a few too many playmakers on the offensive side for Ohio State.
Yeah. One more matchup for me, and I think it is the matchup of the game. It does not involve Abdul Carter and the left tackle. It does not involve Ohio State's wideouts. It involves two players, but I think it'll be more than two players. I think Ohio State, more than any other team Penn State will see this year, has the one player that can slow Tyler Warren. Caleb Downs, the safety, is really, really, really good. I did a podcast with Doug Lamarice, who Kings of the North podcast. He's covered Cleveland, or he's for Cleveland.com. He covered Ohio State for a long time. He's seen a lot of Caleb Downs. Caleb Downs is a second-year safety, freshman All-American at Alabama, recruited by Ohio State. Nick Saban retires. He jumps to Ohio State. Doug doesn't like Caleb Downs. He loves Caleb Downs. He says he's the best player on that defense. Other than Jeremiah Smith, he's probably the best player on the team. He does so many different things for that Ohio State defense. He can save the day. He can make up for misses. He said he did it a couple times in the Nebraska game. The kid's about 6 foot, 205, smart, athletic, rangy. He's going to need some help, but I think that Caleb Downs matched up with Tyler Warren is the matchup of the game. If you think about just all that Tyler Warren has done in some of Penn State's most significant games this year, whether it was the Bowling Green game where they needed him for the comeback, I think it was 8 for 146. He made some big plays against Illinois in a tight game. He won the Ohio State game, and even last week, I think that he would have had a bigger role if there wasn't a quarterback change. But even Max on that touchdown run by Katron Allen, if we go back and watch it, his seal block inside created that lane. He was one of three guys that actually did it. It was two big guys and Tyler Warren, who's not a small guy. But if you watch that block, it is like teaching tape, the way he walled off that guy. And Katron was basically untouched. I think this is Ohio State has a guy, and I might be wrong, but they have a guy that can kind of keep that can prevent maybe Tyler Warren from taking over this game. Like you cannot shut Tyler Warren down. He's too good. They'll use him in so many different ways where maybe Ohio State can't account for him. But maybe as a pure receiver in this game, I think they have a guy they feel pretty good about matching up with Tyler Warren. And this is the only time I'm going to say that this year.
No, I think you're right. And two things to add to that, against Wisconsin, the Nick Singleton receiving touchdown that was so good, the one-handed catch, Tyler Warren had the pick on that. I mean, and it was a completely legal pick. He just draws so much attention from a defense. And then I will also say, though, Caleb Downs is great. Really good safety in the back end. It looks like Ohio State is getting their other really good safety, Lathan Ransom, back this weekend. So those are two guys, bigger defensive back bodies that are going to be able to help out against Tyler Warren this weekend. So don't forget about that matchup for sure, because I think you're right. That's a big one.
You could imagine if Kevin Winston was healthy, the safety play in this game between Penn State's three and those two, that would be, of all the firepower, I might have been most excited to see those safeties. I mean, if they were all healthy, this would have been just an unbelievable game for safety play. I mean, there's just so much talent, Max. And I think as we trend towards making our game selections here on the Blue-White Breakdown, I think I'm just going to speak for myself. If I was a smart guy, if I was Max, I could really see this as like an epic defensive struggle, just because of the players at every level on both teams. Last year's game was 20-12. I know it was a different offense. It was a different Drew Allar. Tyler Warren had not evolved yet, but Ohio State held Penn State basically to a pair of field goals until a mop-up drive, and they didn't have Denzel Burke in that game. Denzel Burke is playing in this game. Travion Henderson is playing in this game. You look at who the players they've imported. You look at who the players they kept back in school on the Ohio State side, and you look at Penn State's defense with Jalen Reed's emergence, with Zane Durant's emergence, with Abdul Carter being used all over the field. I mean, they're two top 10 defenses in just about every important statistical category. And I think if I was a smart guy, I'd probably pick this game 17-14 or 20-17. I think, though, because of the athleticism on the field, there could be a couple of big plays in this game that you don't see coming just because of that, and it could lend the game to being a little bit more high scoring. I'll let you go first. I think we might be in agreement on who we like. I'm not sure, but who do you like and why, Max?
Yeah, I wish I didn't have to pick this game because like I mean, I just wish I didn't have to because I could see it going either way.
Yeah.
All through the preseason, I've liked Ohio State, and honestly, all through the season, I still like Ohio State. But even with that said, like this is as good a chance James Franklin has had since 2017. I mean, when you look at the talent on both rosters, this is as good as it gets. The coaching is as good on both sides as it's been. I mean, like you said, last year we all felt like Penn State had a chance because Ohio State wasn't going to be the world beater it always was. Yeah. But the coaching came up short in that one. That's not going to be the case this year. I mean, it's just not. Like, we've seen it enough from Andy Kotelnicki. He's going to be able to scheme some stuff up when they need it. Like, that's the bottom line. The talent is there for both sides. Yeah. I wish I didn't have to pick this game, but I do. And I just think it's a gut feeling. I still think Ohio State gets it done. I don't have a great reason for saying that. I really don't, because I just think these teams are really evenly matched. I think that their strengths are all interlocked. Like the receivers and the defensive backs are good on both sides. Like who knows what Will Howard's going to do, but his receivers are so good to balance him out. Is Drew Allar fully healthy? Maybe not. Like there's so many storylines to this game, Bob. It's impossible, but I'm going 27-24 Ohio State in a tight one. The one thing I will say to like, not even just cover myself, but just to add, what I wrote was like, Will Howard is the player on the spot this game for anybody. I think even if Drew Allar is not fully healthy, like out of anybody on the field this weekend, I think Will Howard is the number one most impactful player because he hasn't been perfect this year. I mean, he had the blunder against Oregon that kind of messed him up. He did not look good against Nebraska last week, but he doesn't really have to do a whole lot to get the ball to those receivers. So, like, if he's throwing a pick or if he's getting sacked, Penn State could flip this really easily. So I think his performance is going to be the single most impactful on this game this weekend.
So it's 11 o'clock on Thursday morning, Penn State fans, as you listen to this, and I can tell as you listen to this, you're going to be saying, hey, did these guys read the PennLive game predictions? They clearly did not read Johnny McGonigal's picks. Max didn't read what Bob wrote. Bob did not see what Max wrote because I don't want to say it's a clone, but it's a clone. 27-24, Ohio State. The matchup to watch is Caleb Downs and his assortment of whoever else they use against Tyler Warren. And the game will swing on Will Howard, who is going to make the plays in the fourth quarter that gives Ohio State a 27-24 win. So that is eerie, Max Ralph. But I can honestly say we did not consult each other before we looked at our game predictions.
I don't know. This is the second time this year we've done this.
This
Bob.
was even more identical, though. Wait till you see what you said and what is basically what I wrote. So I just feel strongly about it, and I'll tell you this: you can say what you want about Will Howard. He's first of all, he's having a pretty good year. Mm-hmm. He's not the prettiest passer. He is not. You're not going to mistake him for Drew Allar throwing the ball. You're not going to mistake him for Dylan Gabriel running the ball. But he has a knack. He's always had a knack, dating back to his Kansas State days in a lot of games, for asserting himself in a tight game and finding a way to win. We talked about the quarterback run. I think you're going to see it a lot in this game with their offensive line issues. It's the fourth quarter. I think the kid has stones, Max. I think he's got stones. He's a veteran player. I think he knew exactly what he was saying when he said it. I think he wants to motivate himself. I don't think he cares I don't think he cares about what anyone else thinks. And I do think the game is going to pivot on him, not the Penn State quarterbacks. I think the kid's going to make the play, and that's why I give Ohio State the slightest edge. But I see it almost eerily similar to you. So we're either going to be looking at each other in the press box after we're going, hey, not bad. Pretty good, Max. Like, pretty good, Bob. Or we might need security to get to our cars after the game.
Oh, Bob, I think you're right on Howard. Like, you don't go up there in front of reporters and say, we'll see if I was good enough when I come home this weekend.
Yeah.
If you don't believe you're going to do it, I think he's I don't want to take, like, I think he's a good enough player to be where he is.
But he's not the classic, can't miss kid at the next level. Like he might, he's a better college quarterback than he would ever be as an NFL quarterback. And Ohio State's had plenty of those.
Right.
But he's just a guy that you look at him, he doesn't look overly fast. Like the arm, like the release, the arm, nothing's like particularly pretty or, classic as far as the throwing motion, but none of that matters. None of that matters in a big spot. Can you make the plays? There have been better looking quarterbacks at Penn State and at Ohio State that have not been able to make the plays in the clutch. I think he's going to do it, and he's going to have to do it against one of the best defenses in football, in college football, in a tough environment. But I think there's just something about him. We could be wrong, but when he said that last week and I read it in the press box at Camp Randall, I'm like, you know what? The history of this is like everyone's going to assume, he's setting himself up for failure. But what if he's not? What if he's just so determined to show people what he can do that he's going to find a way to do it?
Yeah. I mean, I will say, like, I could very easily see Penn State getting a pretty huge interception off of him this weekend. Like, I think that he's a good quarterback for what Ohio State needs to do. I think he and Chip Kelly are a really good marriage together with what they both like to do in the run game. I do think the decision making is not all the way there sometimes, which could hinge this game. But on like on a holistic look at this thing, like, it's just another, like, I won't believe it till I see it thing, Like, I know we talked about James Franklin's record, and like, there's part of it that's, there's a lot of things have gone into that, right? Like last year, the offensive play calling was terrible. You look at the fourth quarter comebacks. It's just like, it really is a block right now. Like whether it's a mental block, whether it's a talent block, whatever it is, I just feel like I gotta see it to believe it. So until I do, I'm going to Ohio State.
All right. Hey, good luck, Max, as we close this blue-white breakdown. We'll have a bunch. It's a Thursday morning. We're still going to have a bunch of stuff up on PennLive leading up to game and after the game. Max, myself. Don't forget about Joe Hermit's pictures. Don't forget about our guy, Johnny McGonigal. I believe he is picking Penn State. I don't want to speak for him, but judging from our text messages last night in the text chain, I think he might be siding with the Lions. I'm not sure, but that was what I got from it. But Max, no matter what, enjoy Halloween. Good luck with the costume. I hope you win some kind of prize or award, because at least you didn't mail it in. At least you're giving it a shot.
That's right. Always have to, Bob.